way Garo acts towards the main character is exactly the way that I act towards Todd sometimes. He's such a good guy, but I love that show. It's just freaking funny. What'd you say?
Sergeant Frog is awesome.
Yeah, Sergeant Frog's awesome. It's really, really, I actually enjoy the show. I have to admit, there's a lot of times in anime where I watch it and I don't always get the joke. It's not always like funny to me. I don't think it's meant to be funny for Americans because maybe we just don't understand kind of what's supposed to be funny about it. But Sergeant Frog is one of those shows where I laugh consistently every time. The humor, like, it plays really, really well in English. Let's see. Easiest voices to do are always some of my favorites. Like Saigo is easy. I call him a coffee character. And any character that I can do while holding a cup of coffee, I love those characters. Like, the ones that I generally move my hands and my arms and stuff around. I have this habit of mimicking what happens on the screen, and I just do it instinctively. You just can't help it. But when you're trying to look at something and copy it and put your voice in its mouth, you can't help but just sort of move your hands the same way or do whatever they're doing. But any character I can just go in and sip coffee and do it that way. I like those. Yamcha's really easy to do because he's just kind of high and easy to play. He's dumb. Let's see. What did you say? Yeah, he's good. He's a good guy. I'm very good friends with John Bergmeyer, the guy who plays Tien Shinhan. And he's the head writer for Funimation, actually. And we have this kind of like ongoing rivalry between Yamcha and Tien, who's the dorkiest. So whenever I go in to record, if I go in and record a line, if Yamcha and Tien kind of in the same scene, we'll jokingly record a line for the other person. Like the other day, I went in and like the line before the Yamcha line was supposed to be Tien going like, I'm gonna train as hard as I can, and then followed by Yamcha going like, yeah, me too, or something like that. I think he left a bomb. We call him a bomb when you leave a line right before some other actor's line and you don't tell him it's coming. He's like, and all he did was just goes, homo. So I think mine was back to him was fag. Like, so we have this like douchey kind of frat boy relationship between the two of them. There was a Dragon Ball game a while back where it had this weird idea of like what would happen if Yamcha and Tien fused. Do you guys remember that?
What did I do?
Thank you. Yeah, that was brilliant. Sheer brilliance. Other questions, Chris? Yeah.
How does one start off in the career?
First you have to get a job working at a radio station in Galveston. And then you have to decide to move up to Denton. And then you have to play in a couple of indie rock bands. And then you have to have a pretty good friendship with the guitar player who will introduce you to his wife, who will work at Funimation. And then she will find out that you've been doing other types of voice work, and then you'll go in and audition for them, and then a month later they will say, hey, would you like to come in and work for you? And then you say yes. And then they tell you, oh, it's a show called Dragon Ball Z, and you go, oh, okay. And they say and then they'll say you need to find a cast in Dallas, and you go, okay, but you can't do it with any of the agents or anything like that. You're going to have to find local people, and so then you just cast yourself on a bunch of stuff because you can't find anybody else. And then you find out that the show becomes like huge, and then you look like you're kind of real jackass for casting yourself as all those things. Actually, in those early days, it was really hard because dubbing work is different than there's two types of work. There's dubbing and there's prelay. Prelay is done on cartoons like Simpsons and South Park and any show where the voices are laid down first and then they draw the animation over top of it. Dubbing is the other way around. Well, there's just an understanding that it takes longer to dub something than it does to prelay something, because you can get the entire cast in, and I mean, if everybody's rehearsed and everyone knows what they're doing, you can finish a 30-minute episode in an hour. Technically, it probably doesn't happen that way, but it takes 4 hours just to get through one major character in one episode of anime. So it doesn't pay as much. So that's a problem we had in the very beginning of Funimation, that the agents were like, we're not going to send our actors out to make that kind of money. And so we just had to find people. We found Goku, we found Sean Schemmel. I had to put an ad in the paper, like it just said casting call for like voices. And I called in as many people as we could. We found Sunny straight, Krillin that way, we found Gohan that way, we found Bulma that way. Like we found everybody through this ad in the paper. And we auditioned like almost 1,000 people, and a few people just kind of stuck out. I mean, seriously, I wish I could say there was some sort of magic way to get into voice acting, but
Answer the newspaper ads.
answer all the newspaper ads you see. When they say wanted, model, some nudity required, definitely do it. Promise, there's nothing wrong with that. No, seriously, it's a really random thing to get into. I mean, if I had some suggestions, I'd say definitely move somewhere where there's more voice work being done, like New York City or LA or sometimes Houston and Dallas. It's just a really tough business to get into. You have to be a little bit lucky. And I feel extremely gracious and grateful that I got that chance. There's people who come from different kind of schools. Some people are trained in like collegiate term, like drama. Some people come from theater. Some people are film. I came from radio, and some people are musicians and singers. Because the dubbing process, at least, voice acting is its own thing, but dubbing requires not only an ability to kind of portray a character, but you have to have a lot of coordination, and you have to have a lot of good timing too, because you have to read a line, and you're not always going to be able to read it the way you want to. I was saying this last night, you might have like, I am the most powerful warrior in the universe, and you might have, I am the most powerful warrior in the universe. So you have to find ways of saying like lines more creatively than you would just instinctively want to say them. So I found that like singers and musicians, drummers, people who have good rhythm are pretty good at that, because you kind of, like, as a director, I have to tell the actor, all right, that was good, it was really nice, the first part you need to slow down the first part, you need to break after the V in the second part, and you need to speed up the very, very last part of it. Now try it again. So there's a lot of coordination that goes into doing it, and you have to be able to quickly memorize something to watch the screen, and there's a lot of trickery that goes into it. But really anything, and anyone can kind of be a voice actor. It just requires the right amount of luck and some acting skill, and in my case, just a decent voice too. So location in some degrees, time 3. Yes.
Are there any characters that you found to be difficult to voice, especially?
Yeah, there's a lot of characters that are difficult to voice, and I get cast as those characters all the time. They're like, Chris is in Dragon Ball, he loves to scream. Like, that's not necessarily true. I played this character called Kikucho in Seven Samurai. I don't know if you... Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The guy he was a great character. Sit there thinking, damn, yo, kind of like this. Didn't matter what he was saying, but it always came out like this. And it was so loud, it was so painful, not easy to do. There was a part, I played, for a brief period of time, I played Ox King in Dragon Ball. And it was easy, it wasn't that hard to do, it was actually replacing somebody else who had left. Because I was always I was also that guy who replaced all the actors that left to do other things, because we just didn't have time to find someone else. And it was fine when I was doing it, like at first, because Ox King would only come in Dragon Ball Z and just go, hey